Discipleship can take many forms. Most of the time we think of it as something that happens in the church, around the church, perhaps evangelizing outside the church. But discipleship can also happen in the classroom. In this episode of A Call to Discipleship, we explore Catholicism in the classroom, and we focus on a couple of schools in the Diocese of Knoxville. One of them is Sacred Heart Cathedral School in Knoxville, located obviously right next to Sacred Heart Cathedral. The principal, Dan Breen, is with us today. Dan, welcome to the show. And before I get to the question about some of the technology and some of the stuff, I'm having flashbacks because I don't want Bishop Sticka to know this, but I did make one or two trips to the principal's office when I was a bit younger. So I'm having a flashback or two here. Yeah. But this is a good occasion. It's great to talk to you. And tell me a little bit about what's going on at Sacred Heart Cathedral School with the technology. I know this is something you're rolling out, and it's a very big deal for the students, for the teachers, and for the whole community.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Nice to be here. Nice to get to talk with you. So it is a big deal, the whole technology program. And last summer, when I first arrived at the school, I had a series of conversations, focus groups, if you will, with parents, with students, with teachers, and we talked about where the school was and where it needed to develop, and the need for educational technology was clear at that time, simply because it's a tool in the educational process these days that we need to have, and it's something that really helps the learning process when used properly. So we made that a goal over the course of the year, and the first goal was to have internet that was fast and reliable. And so while we literally had the roof off the school last summer doing all kinds of construction work, we took the time to rewire the entire building and to really grow that sense of trust in the internet, so that when teachers choose to use it as an educational tool, it's there, it's available, and they can trust that it will be there for their lessons. You don't want a teacher with 20 kids to depend on technology and then to have it let them down. So that goal number one was to have it be quick and reliable, and then quickly and really very organically, the demand for devices just started to grow, and teachers started to see that it was reliable, and in fact we started to offer training sessions, and you could just see the enthusiasm just continued to grow and grow. And really, so what's beautiful about this is it's really a teacher-driven, organic movement towards these devices, towards educational technology. And we had almost arm wrestling matches over the devices that we had. And so there was really a need. And so for our auction, our gala this spring, we decided to use this as a central point, the need for developing our educational technology. And so
what did you do specifically? What are you bringing into the classroom?
So we will have a one-to-one Chromebook program in our middle school, and then we'll have a really increased ratio of students to computers in the younger grades as well.
So I've got to ask, because I'm as up to speed as I can be with technology, but it's always changing. What's a Chromebook? What does it bring to the classroom, I guess, and how do you use it?
Sure. So a Chromebook is essentially, it's a simple device. It's a laptop that really does one thing very well, and that is it connects to the internet, essentially. And so, whereas other laptops might have a lot of need for memory, Chromebooks really don't. They store everything in the cloud. And so really it's a way to use Google's Chrome system and to use all the tools that come along with it, educational tools, and that's essentially what it does. And so because it's so simple and it doesn't have a lot of local memory, they're fairly inexpensive but also reliable and sturdy, and so we thought it would be a good choice for us. And there are studies that show that laptops, when used appropriately, are really beneficial towards the learning process.
How do you develop your curriculum to match, I guess, the technology? What kind of process takes place to augment both of those concerns, I guess, into a program that a student and a teacher can both use?
Right, sure. Well, I think step number one is to allow the device to help you access that curriculum better before you make any adjustments to the curriculum itself. And what it can do, especially at first, is to allow you to access curriculum differently. So, for example, technology can be a really powerful ally in project-based learning. They kind of go hand in hand. So that's something we're exploring as a school as well. And that's just sort of a modern pedagogical approach, and technology kind of fits into it. So we can have the same curriculum, which is tried and true and very well received. We have a really strong academic program. And so what we're trying to do at first is to access that curriculum in a stronger way that really engages children. And it also helps the technology that is helps them to access the curriculum in a more individualized way. So, for example, in math, you can find all kinds of ways to individualize instruction through this technology. So I think the summary is we're finding new ways to explore and access the curriculum and to make this a more individualized approach as well.
I can remember going back more than 4 decades now, and the controversy in a math class I took in high school was whether or not we're going to be allowed to use calculators.
Right.
And our geometry teacher was adamantly opposed to any sort of device like that. But now we reached a point where this is part of our life. It's how we work every day,
right.
And it's now how we're teaching and learning, I guess, in the schools as well.
No, that's very true. And really, one of the goals you have to keep in mind is to make sure that what you're doing with the device is actually better than what you could do without it. So, for example, if you can get immediate feedback as a student on your work, that's better than having to wait 2 days for a quiz to be graded. If you can collaborate with your peers on a project inside and outside of the classroom without having to meet at McDonald's, that's better than the old ways, which made the logistics really hard. So the focus has to be on what uses are better rather than what's just replacing the old-fashioned way of doing something.
We'll talk more technology in a second, but let's talk about Sacred Heart Cathedral School. Sure. And you've been there a year now, and you obviously been very ambitious in getting this started. But let's take a look at some photos of life at school, and talk to me a little bit about what it's like to be a student there. It's not just academics. There's arts, sure. athletics, and a spiritual life component to all this, too. Obviously, your students are challenged in many different ways.
Right, absolutely. So just to speak in general about where we're headed as a school and kind of how the vision plays out there day to day, we want to have a Christ-centered Catholic environment, and everything then comes from that. That determines how we relate to our young people. That determines how we see parents as the primary educators of their children. That determines how we interact with one another as professionals as well. And then the second aspect, of course, is academic strength. We're a school, and we need to be about a strong academic program. And so we have obviously a great emphasis on that. And then a third very important component to me is to realize opportunities for our students. So as I've said before, it's a way we want to find ways for children to either develop a passion that they have, or to find a passion and then develop it as part of our school. So opportunity is a big word that
Let's move
comes
along
to play.
on some of these photos if we can. And Bishop was there when you kind of rolled out these the Chromebooks, I guess, in recent weeks. And he's a big technology guy, too, so it wasn't too much to get him on board with that. And then, I know athletics is a big part of a lot of students' lives, not all of them, but some of them. And your athletic programs are doing real well, so you're on the map with that. And I think one of the things that struck me when I first attended some of the events at Sacred Heart School was the fact that the spiritual component, masses regularly, all school masses, and you get the academics, you get the arts, the sciences, athletics, but there's also that spiritual component that is the basis for everything that takes place at the school. The technology wasn't cheap. Tell me a little bit about how you were able to afford bringing this technology to the classroom. And is it all in, or is this being rolled out as the new school year begins?
Right. So it will be rolled out really as the new school year begins. But I've written the check with some sweating, but we wrote the check, and the Chromebooks will be here in a couple of weeks. And so that will be phase one. None of this happens overnight, but that will be phase one. The money really came from a couple of sources. First, we helped ourselves by really investing this summer in the infrastructure of the school, and I think because we invested in our own infrastructure, we saw great support come partly as a result of that and as a way to meet this need also. And so at our auction, we had a goal of $15,000 as a core gift, so to speak, that would help us to get these Chromebooks. And if we compared that to years past, the year before I got there, it was about $10,000 for this sort of specific item that we fund. And so we thought $15,000 would be about right. But lo and behold, we had two matching gifts of $15,000 each just before the auction. And so once we raised that $15,000, we had two matching gifts, and now we're up to $45,000, and that was a game changer. So people really wanted to be in on the ground floor of something really exciting that will change the school.
What have you learned about technology in the classroom, maybe through this process? Things maybe you didn't expect, anticipate, and the benefits of bringing this into the classroom on a one-to-one basis with the students?
Sure. What I have experienced in a really full way here is the power of teacher-to-teacher learning. And so we had a certain number of our teachers who were trained specifically, who volunteered to be trained specifically in using Google Apps for Education, for example. And now we have 3 Google certified educators, and that number will keep growing. And so as some people were trained and excited about what they were able to do, and as teachers saw other students being excited by this approach as well, it just started to grow organically. And so I think when you're doing something that's engaging and truly better than previous ways of doing things, there's just a natural growth process that comes along with it. And so that's something I've learned and enjoyed just through the process this year.
So school's out for the summer. It won't be long before it starts. I guess a chance to make a pitch on behalf of Sacred Heart School. You've been there a year. Obviously you enjoy it, and
yes, people
value your presence there. Anything you want to convey about the school as far as what you're doing there and maybe the hope of attracting a student or two along the way?
I would say it's a unique school, and by that I mean we often talk in education about teaching the whole child, and I really believe at Sacred Heart that we have a unique opportunity to really, truly teach the whole child, starting with the spiritual life that sadly is missing in a lot of schools, but that's who we are as an institution. And then there is just tremendous opportunity at the school to grow in as a person in knowledge and experience in academics, athletics, arts, in addition to the spiritual life. So I think for those who are really looking for an education that reaches the whole child and does so in a Christ-centered environment where Christ is honored and is first and foremost in our hearts every single day, this is the place to go.
Dan, I appreciate it. I know I said school's out for the summer. That's for the kids. I know you're working pretty much all summer, as most administrators do, but we appreciate your time on the show, and try to enjoy a little bit of the summer.
Yes, I will. Yeah. Grateful to be here.